Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. I'm Simon, and this is The Ordinary Filmmaker. The purpose of this video is to show you what it's like to shoot in cropped mode. How is the detail? What's it going to look like? Right now, I'm shooting in 4K 30 with high quality mode. So that's going to mean I'm shooting the full width of the sensor. That's 8K worth of information being downsampled in camera to 4K. I'm also shooting in all I, and I'm shooting 8-bit. So now let's go ahead and take a look and see what this looks like. If I shoot in crop mode, I'm going to be exactly the same distance away. Here we go. Right, so here we are. We're in 4K, 30 frames per second, all I, 8-bit, but now we're using the cropped mode. How does it look? Has the detail fallen off a little bit? I would suspect it has. 4K HQ, as I said, is pulling all the information off the sensor, not pixel binning, not cropping, and downsampling that within camera to 4K, and I'm not getting that anymore. Not only that, when you do enable cropped mode, Canon tells you you're going to lose some detail. It warns you that when you choose that option. So is it worth it? Well, it really depends on what you're shooting. If you're going to be doing wildlife photography, or if you're going to be shooting shots of the moon or other things that are far away, then yes, this crop mode can really help you. It'll provide a benefit. And if you think just for a minute, I'm shooting on a 24 to 105. 105 doesn't allow me to zoom in that much, but with a 1.6 crop, that takes me to about 170. Now, if I'm shooting in 4K and downsampling to 1080, that gives me the equivalent of 2 times optical zoom. So that 170 now becomes 340. If I shoot in 8K and downsample to 1080, or downsample to 4K, it would be a 2 times, but from 8K all the way down to 1080, that's 4 times. That would give me about the equivalent of 630 millimeters, all off a 24 to 105. Now, I understand there is a bit of math involved here, and yes, you do have to kind of work that out, or you can just experiment. Take it outside and play around with it. Oh, my phone's ringing. Let me just stop that. I always forget something to do in a video. I'm not going to edit that out, but unfortunately, I left my phone on. It's in the house, but my watch picks up on that, so I do apologize for that. Let me just take a look. How am I exposed here? Yeah. So I've learned a valuable lesson. Now I can feel the sun coming on me, so it's probably going to, my exposure might be off a little bit, but from what I can see on the iPad here, things are looking good. And this is a very valuable lesson I learned in the last couple of days. By using Camera Connect, I can actually see myself right here, and I can see, well, for example, right now it looks like with the extra sun coming out, I'm overexposed, so I'm going to just adjust the f-stop a little bit. And there we go. And so now I'm not overexposed. But the reason I had this in my hand is instead of moving from the same spot that I was before, and yes, I do have something on the ground to let me know where it is, this allows me to see that since I moved to crop mode, do I need to adjust my exposure a bit? So I've got this big screen here. I'm able to adjust my exposure, my ISO, my shutter speed, and all that wonderful stuff. And this is very helpful to prevent me from being overexposed. But this is a tough lighting situation. As I've just started filming this scene, the sun is changing. It's starting to poke through the clouds a little bit. So please forgive me. It's going to be off a little bit. It's just par for the course. I am shooting in full manual, but this will give me the option to adjust things just a little bit. Anyhow, back to the video. So cropping works very good if you're going to be doing wildlife and moon shots or any sort of astrophotography. It gives you that much extra zoom. But for normal filming, I'd recommend just shooting normal. Why would you crop? Why would you give up that full frame sensor you spent so much money on? Why would you get increased noise? It doesn't really make sense. At certain scenarios, like I said, such as wildlife, such as moonshots, or anything where you really want to punch in, you really want to be able to zoom in and get the maximum length. Now, if you're shooting with a 600 millimeter, then you're obviously going to have a few restrictions because you're going to be starting off at f11. But that's a whole nother story, and we'll get into that once I review that lens. But for the purpose of this video, I'd like to have your comments. Let me know what you're watching this video on, if it's an iPhone, an iPad, or a computer, or a TV. And tell me, do you notice much of a difference between cropped mode and 4K HQ? I'm really curious to know. And it's not just for me. Give me as much detail as you can, because this is a community. I'm doing this not for my benefit, not for your benefit, but for everybody's benefit. So when people read the comments, they can get an idea of what they can expect from shooting in cropped mode. And a lot of people don't have the R5 yet, so they're watching these videos so they can get an idea of what it's going to be like, so they have ideas of how they want to shoot, and probably creating a list of different scenarios that they want to try out. So I'd really appreciate your comments in this section down below. I do have a couple of lessons learned from this weekend. I shot my Q&A video on Saturday, and I had a lot of problems. The biggest problem I had was related to choosing 10-bit, which is what happens when you enable C-Log. I have an iMac Pro. It's an 8-core processor. It's got 32 gigs of RAM. It's got a really good graphics processor, and normally it just chews through everything. Like I can edit this 4K HQ video or 4K crop video, any 4K video, without it rendering and it being without dropping any frames, and it's terrific. But with 10-bit, it took about an hour to render it out, and without it being rendered, it's very, very choppy. And I could have done proxies, but I thought I'll just let it render. And it's a Saturday. I've got time. Go away. Come back in an hour. I came back in an hour, and I saw a message on my screen that my hard drive was full. I had 1.5 gigs available. That's not a lot. I wasn't going to try a reboot without cleaning some stuff up. So I did. I cleaned up about 100 gigs, but still, only 60% of the video had rendered. It is 15 minutes long, but still 60%. And the project size was 768 gigabytes. That's huge. It really is. Oh, I see the sun going on. Let me just check my exposure again. Oh, it's lost its connection. So let's just hope I'm not too dark here. I think I am. Cannot connect. So we got to do the easy connect first. And this is the one problem with this. Unless you leave your iPad in do not go to sleep mode, this is what's going to happen. So I'm just going to restart it right now. I'll check on that. But let's get back to the story. So 1 terabyte drive, pretty well full up. The project size, if it had fully rendered, the project size would have been over 1 terabyte. That's huge. Now, in terms of export time, and I usually do an export time partway through just to check how things out, check how things look before uploading. It took the better part of 3 hours to do that. 3 hours. It won't let me connect. Oh well. So if I'm underexposed now, we're just going to have to deal with that. The better part of 3 hours to export. So I spent a lot of time trying to get the project rendered, and the exporting time, I knew I needed 3 hours, and that left me very little time to properly color correct. And in hindsight, I can see that, well, colors are looking pretty good. The temperature is off. It's a little bit too cool, and I'm not too happy with that. But I was so frustrated. By the time 9 o'clock came at night, I've decided that's it. Let's put it up there, and lesson learned. So yes, you're going to get much better dynamic range by shooting in C-Log, but you're going to need a lot more storage, you're going to need a lot more processing power, and it's going to take a lot longer. And a video like that probably might have, over the course of a week, maybe earned me $20 to $30. It's really not worth putting in that much extra time. Plus, with YouTube's compression, is it really worth it? Am I really going to see the benefit of that dynamic range? Probably not. Now, for my run and gun stuff, where I'm not sending it up to YouTube, I shoot in 4K HQ most of the time. I never have to worry about overheating. Today I shot it, I think, about 5 different times, but I'm shooting small clips, and so I never have to worry about overheating. But the detail that I get is incredible. And since I'm not sending it up to YouTube, I don't have a lot of compression artifacts. I don't have any distortion, and I am exporting it in H.265, so I get really good color reproduction and decent dynamic range. It is 8-bit, but again, for the professional stuff that I do, which is for families, for my family, for other families, 8-bit is more than enough. They're not going to go, ooh, Simon, your dynamic range is a little bit off there. Yeah, can you shoot in 10-bit the next time? And we need 4K HQ. A lot of times, they just want 1080. So I'll shoot in 4K 30, downsample, and give them incredible detail in 1080. So that's one lesson learned. The other lesson that I learned is I was quite impressed with the audio quality coming out of the internal mic on this camera. Now normally I just ditch that audio. I bring in the audio from this Tascam mic, then I synchronize it with the R5's audio, so that way my audio here is completely in sync. So as soon as I bring it in, if I start to hear both, I'll go in and I'll automatically just mute the track essentially. I uncheck it so it's not in there. Well, this time I forgot to do that, and what I noticed was, wow, there's a lot of birds. Now this morning there's no birds, so that pretty much tells me we're probably going to get some bad weather. But go back and watch that Q&A video. Notice the number of birds in the background. Notice how more full the audio is. Now I did do a poll yesterday asking you if you noticed a difference. I'd say about maybe 25% of you said, yeah, I do notice a difference. The audio sounds more full. The majority of you said, no, we don't really notice a difference at all. And nobody said that they noticed the quality be poor. So I think in future videos, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable the in-camera audio. Now what I did, because it was overpowering, is I did drop the dB level down just a little bit, so it wasn't overpowering, but that gave me a slightly more full sound. That being said, that's an opportunity to do another video where I just focus on audio. And in that video, what I'm going to look at is audio from the internal camera microphone itself, the Tascam DR10L, and my Rode VideoMic Pro, which is what I generally use for shotgun, what I use for run and gun stuff. It's a shotgun mic that mounts right on top of the camera. What I really like about the Tascam, though, is it's another audio source. So if the camera fails or if this fails, you know, I've at least got some audio. And from what I'm seeing now, the audio from the camera is good enough that if this dies or I forget to press record, I might just go ahead with the audio from the internal mic on the R5. So I'm surprisingly impressed with that. Some of you might think, well, Simon, it's ridiculous for professionals would never use the in-camera. I know, but I'm the ordinary filmmaker, and by and large, I'm appealing to regular folks. And I know that the R5 is a high-level camera, but we all know there's an awful lot of ordinary filmmakers that do save up and get these cameras, and that will last them decades. And they'll use it, and they'll invest in the lenses. I know it's not cheap, but you know, we all buy cars, right? And cars are way more expensive than cameras. So yes, it's very expensive for the ordinary filmmaker, but it's not out of reach. And us ordinary filmmakers, we don't always remember our microphones or the batteries. So having that option to use the internal microphone and to provide decent audio, I think is a very big plus. But that's it for now, guys. Thanks so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. We'll see you again soon.